If you're looking for the answers, I don't have them. But what I do have is a particular set of skills. Skills I've acquired over a very long career. Skills that make me a nightmare, or at least a pain in the ass, for people who mislead, misinform, or misrepresent the sports card industry. So if you don't do that, I'll let it go. But if you do, as always, I'm going to bring you up. Guys, welcome to another episode of the Sports Card Investigator. My name is Andy. I am the aforementioned Sports Card Investigator, and I am so happy to be here today. We're going to talk about a lot of things today. A little bit later on, we're going to talk about basically what steps you take before, when, and if you sell or buy sports cards. This channel has really become, for lack of a better term, a labor of love for me. I really like doing it. I didn't think in the beginning, I didn't know whether I would or not, because it just wasn't me. I'm used to interacting with people and not with a camera. But now that I see all the support and people that I've met along the way, I really like doing it. And I hope you guys are getting something out of it. I enjoy the interaction with you guys and all the new friends that I have met along the way. I can't tell you how much I appreciate that. Before I start, last time when I had my episode, I talked about taxes. Bench Clear Media put out a great video. Everything you wanted to know about taxes. They had an accountant on there. So if you guys are concerned or have questions about that, I would definitely recommend that you tune in and watch their video. It was terrific. If you guys will indulge me, I want to tell you a little story. I want to tell you an experience that I had that I hope hits home, or maybe for whatever reason, maybe you'll enjoy it. You know, when I was young, there was a baseball player by the name of Richie Ashburn. Sam, are you out there? Are you watching this video? Because I know Sam, the card collector, he knows who Richie Ashburn. Let me see. Sam? There's Sam. Okay. So Sam, Magic Mirror, Google it. Sam had did a video, and I actually saw one of his videos that he had with Richie Ashburn, the shortstop for the Phillies, on there. Richie Ashburn unexpectedly passed away a long time ago. And at the time of his passing, he was a radio color guy for the Philadelphia Phillies. He worked alongside the legendary, "That ball is out of here," Harry Kalas. If you don't know who they are, go on YouTube. Especially Harry Kalas had some of the most famous baseball calls in the history of the game, and they were so good together. Richie died unexpectedly. He was relatively young, so 70 years old. He actually died of a heart attack after the Phillies pounded the Mets like 13-4. But the thing I remember about Richie's death was how it affected my father. It really touched him in a way that I never thought. It never occurred to me that someone who was on TV or on the radio, or I thought he never even had any contact with, affected him. It took a real emotional toll on him, and it was just weird. So I asked him, I said, like, "Dad, this is really weird." I said, why did Richie Ashburn's death affect you this way? Because I could see it's affecting you. And he looked at me, and his eyes were kind of swelling up with tears, which was really weird for my dad. And he said, "You know, Richie was a nice man. He once gave me a minute of his time." He hesitated a second and looked at me, and he said, "It's when you meet your idol or a hero or just someone that you look up to, it's nice when they meet your expectations. One day you'll understand." And I took it, I was a younger guy, took it with a grain of salt. I'm like, "All right, Pops, whatever. Sorry, you know, he's affecting you that way, but whatever." Fast forward, January 29th, a couple weeks ago. My son texted me. It was pretty early in the morning, and he said, "Hey, John Chaney died. Longtime coach of Temple, just passed away." And I got to tell you guys, that news hit me like a gut punch, and I instantly knew what my dad was talking about. There's a quote by Mark Twain, quotes, right? I'm the quote guy. A lot of guys, other guys, I say, use quotes in there or whatever, but I love quotes. One of my favorites is by Mark Twain. I butcher it all the time, so I actually wrote it down because I wanted to make sure I said it exactly correct. And Mark Twain once said, "When I was a boy of 14, my father was so ignorant I could hardly stand to have the old man around. But when I got to be 21, I was astonished at how much the old man had learned in 7 years." Wow. That quote is so on the money for so many reasons. Temple University is my alma mater. It's my dad's alma mater. It's my brother's alma mater. It's my wife's alma mater. It's where I met my wife. And it is most recently my son's alma mater. To say the least, Temple University has a very, very special place in my heart. And even more so, the basketball program has a very, very special place in my heart. When I attended Temple back in the early 80s, I was fortunate enough to go to every single Temple home game. Why is that? Well, I would if I was a student anyway, right? If you're really a diehard fan. But I was in the pep band, and we went to every single game, obviously, and we then went to a lot of away games. And that was the glory years. That was the John Chaney years. Some of the best times of my life. 1982 to 2006, Coach John Chaney. Fun fact, do you guys know who the 5th winningest program in the history of college basketball is? You do now. That's right, Temple University. So to say I'm a diehard Temple fan would be an understatement. And back in the Chaney years, forget about it. I mean, 5 final, Elite Eights in the tournament every year. Yeah, I won't even get going. Why I'm a little bit, but after I graduated from Temple, I had season tickets. And even though my career took me out of the country, I always followed my Owls, watched them everywhere. I mean, I remember waking up at 3 a.m. on a tape delay game in Bogota, Colombia to watch Temple play Cincinnati. But I digress. And yes, I was there at East Rutherford. The 1987-88 season will be forever ingrained in my brain when we got beat by Duke. And I will never forgive Billy King for what he did to my Mark Macon. But I digress again. Fast forward, 2005. I was on assignment with DEA at the mobile enforcement team. We would travel all around tri-state area, Kentucky, Michigan, Ohio, basically to help local police departments if they had a drug problem. So I got sent with my group. I was a supervisor of the group for I think 3 or 4 months to Steubenville, Ohio. Another quick trivia question. 2 of the most famous people to come out of Steubenville, Ohio. Dean Martin, Tracy Lords. Google her. Anyway, as luck would have it, my Owls were playing Duquesne. So I was not going to miss an opportunity to play or to go see my beloved Owls play in person in Duquesne. So I asked a buddy of mine who was on my team, I said, "You want to go see the Owls?" And he said, "Hell yeah." So we went to the game. And as my habit, we arrived early in the game, walked down to check out the seats in the empty arena. At that time, this is 2005, and both teams were not very good at all. It was just not a good time for Temple basketball, but I wasn't going to miss them because I loved the team. Teams were warming up, and I saw Mark Macon. He was an assistant coach at the time. He was down at the sideline. And I summoned my courage. I walked over, extended my hand, introduced myself to Mark. And he couldn't have been more of a gentleman. We spoke for a few minutes. Couldn't have been nicer. We even spoke about the 1988 season. It's like, you ever say, like, why am I bringing this up? I just had to. And he gave me some insight, and it was terrific. And after our conversation, he looked over and he goes, "Hey, you want to meet the coach?" I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Coach Chaney. Do you want to go meet him?" And I was stunned because, for one, I didn't know whether to say yes or no. Because I think back what my dad said. He goes, never give up a chance or pass up a chance to see one of your idols? So I'm like, okay, larger than life personality. I have such regard for this guy. He's so human. I mean, we've all had faults. He's had issues. You know, you could Google him if you guys who aren't old enough and see his run-ins with John Calipari and some other things that went on in his career. I also knew, sadly, that John's coaching career was going to be coming to an end. It was just time, and I think he knew that. So I thought to myself, you know what? What my dad said all those years before, what if he's not the person I hoped he would be? But life is full of choices. So I said, yeah, I'd like to meet Coach. So we walked over to Coach Chaney, and he was sitting. That in itself was just eerily funny to me. He's just sitting by himself in his, you know, all by himself in an empty arena. So we walked over, and Mark said, hey, Coach, this is Andy. He just wanted to say hello. And Mark walked away. And I'm like, oh, crap, Mark, you're leaving me here now. So John Chaney looked up at me. If you ever see John Chaney, he's a pretty imposing figure, but he looked up at me, put out his hand. I shook it. He moved over one seat. I'll never forget this. And he tapped the empty seat. So I sat down. At this point, I am officially entering the Twilight Zone. And I still think to myself how I even managed to speak. It's crazy. So he quickly took the pressure off. He's asked about what my connection was with Temple, asked me what I was doing now, and then he said a funny thing. He apologized for how bad the team was performing. He used some other choice words that only Coach Chaney could use, but I thought like he's apologizing me for how his team is playing. It was just odd, but so refreshing. We spoke about basketball. It was a surreal and wonderful experience all at the same time. And at the end of the conversation, he noticed I don't know if it was in my pocket or I had my hand in my pocket, or I don't remember exactly. But he said, hey, you got a ticket, or he saw the ticket. But anyway, I had a ticket for the game. And he said, can I see it? So I'm like, okay, now Coach Chaney is now checking my ticket. And he looked at it. He pulled out he had a pen, and he was making some notes on a clipboard. And he signed it with the inscription. In fact, I have it. If you guys can see that. Kind of cool, right? It was a brief conversation that we had. I shook his hand, I walked away, and that was it. So why am I telling you this? I consider you guys all my friends, and I just wanted to share it with you guys because it's something that recently happened. It was still fresh in my head. Maybe in my mind, knowing now that I'll always memorialize this event on YouTube forever, I'll always have it. But I also wanted to give you young guys some advice. If you ever have a chance to meet someone you look up to, do it without question, hesitation, or pause. And I hope if and when you do have a chance to meet someone who you idolize, who you look up to, the person meets your expectations. And if they don't, then that's not someone you should look up to or idolize anyway. They did you a favor, in other words, if they acted the way they really act. So if there's a chance to do it, do it. And however, you know, if it'll be an experience you never forget, and one that I never want you to look back on and say, what if I did it? So that's it. That's my experience with John Chaney. All right, let's change the subject. We are all here for sports cards, so I have a question for you. What do you guys consider when you're thinking about buying cards? What goes into your research? Pop reports, price charts, the status of a player, the player's role on a team. Is he coming off the bench? Is his playing time getting higher or less? Trajectory, is he putting some good games together? Is he in a slump? Is he hurt? Will he be coming back soon? Is he reaching any milestones? All the above? Hopefully some of the above. Hopefully not none of the above. Y'all know me. You know how I earn a living. Quint from Jaws. Again, Google it. Look, I want to make this clear. I'm only speaking now about active players. No GOATs. You ever wonder where that term even came from? I know greatest of all time, but who was the first one to say, oh, he's a GOAT? I'll have to Google that. But we're not talking about GOATs, or certainly not guys that are not playing anymore. That's a whole different process and a different strategy. And I have noticed from watching a lot of content creators, which I do on a daily basis, that a lot of content creators and influencers are focusing solely on pop reports and price charts. And there's definitely a place for that type of information. Price charts for me come into play very early in the process. They're critical because they give me information that I need when I'm targeting players and cards in the beginning, as well as different times as I am chasing them. Once I get a target, once I target a player or a card, I monitor that price early on, wait for what I perceive as the floor, and then pull the trigger. Because for the most part, you know me, I'm going after first-year players. Pop reports, on the other hand, hardly, if ever, come into play for me. Say it isn't so, Andy. Everyone has to use pop reports. By the time I sell a card, pop reports are meaningless. In fact, usually the card I'm selling has a very low or relatively low pop report, even if it's a common card, because I'm grading them quickly. That's kind of an oxymoron, right? If anything, it works in my favor. But here, I'm talking about short-term flips of graded cards. Another statement that is an oxymoron. There is nothing short-term or flipping or quicking about graded cards, but I digress. Everyone's process is different. Yours is different than mine. Yours is different than someone else. And I realize that. But for me, it's identify, purchase, grade, and sell. Or as I refer to it as target, capture, enhance, and dispense. That's my process. That's my strategy. And there are exceptions to my rule because I will never miss an opportunity or leave money on the table. Let me give you guys an example of what I am talking about. March of last year, I was buying Eric Pascal, however we say it. He was on my target list. I was picking up his base prisms for $1 or $2, grading them for $9, so all in for 11 or 12 bucks. I sold what I had of Eric. 9 in total. 7 PSA 10s, and they sold between 45 and 60 bucks, and 2 PSA 9s that sold for $18 a piece. Not good, right? But I made up for it on the PSA 10s. But now, with grading at 15 bucks, and his prisms now selling for $5 a piece, I'm not going to go back to Eric and buy him now because that risk is too high. Grading prices have changed, right? His prices have risen a little bit, not much, but my research and what I believe his status of the team going forward, and everyone has to do their own research, it's not worth me jumping back in. On the flip side, if you look at a guy like RJ Barrett, I was getting his base prism cards for about $6 to $9 a piece, or $6 a piece, give or take, sometimes cheaper. Grading for $9, and I'm all in for 13 to 15 bucks. And I've been selling his PSA 10s for an average of $180, his PSA 9s for $70. Okay, now if RJ is a guy that you believe in long term, now we can circle back, okay, and pick up some of his prisms. Now, there's risk to that. Number one, his prisms now are going for about 20 to 23 bucks, and I see some people on eBay trying to go even higher than that, like 25, 30, 35 a piece, which is, it's crazy. They're out of their minds. But anyway, I digress again. You have to also keep in mind where we are in the process, because a lot of cards now, especially on eBay, has been cherry-picked. So if you're fortunate enough to maybe go to a card show and you can see cards live and in person, that's the way to go. But that's it's all things you have to consider. But what I just told you about pricing, there are much more things to consider than just pricing of the cards, what he's selling for now, because that's just part of the equation. I wonder, after watching these videos of these content creators, if they actually watch the basketball games, if they follow the players, follow the teams. Do they know the difference between an over and back and a discontinue? When I was with DEA, we gathered evidence. The evidence consisted of a lot of things: surveillance, background checks, financial information, financial investigation, search warrant, etc. It wasn't just based on one thing. The case was built and then won on many, many factors. You had to put them all together in a package to ensure your success. If you depend on price charts, and that's the only thing you depend on in your decision making on buys of active players, you're going to be one step behind every single time. Players and their playing status of active players moves their needle. In other words, you won't see the forest for the trees. And that is so important. I just want to stress that to you. I speak to my son on a daily basis. That sounds weird. What dad doesn't speak to their son on a daily basis? But, you know, I'm a little older. My son's a little bit older. My son lives in California. And, in fact, during this, you might have heard it, during this this video, he called me because he was driving around and we were talking about, he wanted to run something by me. And most of our conversations revolve around basketball. It's something we both love. In fact, he's made a career out of it. And more than that, he treats basketball almost like a religion. He lives it, drinks it, eats it. He's on it. And I depend on him for information. He is the guy that provides me information when I look at players. And then I look at what other people are saying. He gives me the tip. And then I go from there. And we have a lot of discussions. And they get heated sometimes, and because we both hate to be wrong. And we discuss everything. Who to buy, who to sell, who's being overlooked, any targets of opportunities, what price enhancers are coming up that we should take advantage of. All what-if scenarios. And we always strive to be one step ahead of other people, as you should too. One of the things we were discussing very recently was, he said, who do you think has a chance to be a first-time All-Star this year? Obviously this year, right? And there's a bunch. Last year there were 10. Look them up. Not all these guys are going to make the All-Star team this year, but just because they're being mentioned is indicative of the type of year that they're having. Now, you guys, obvious guys, right? John, Zion, I think they're no-brainers. They're probably going to make the team. But then you have other guys like Julius Randle, Colin Sexton, Jeremy Grant. Has he been on fire or what? Christian Wood, Zach LaVine, CJ McCollum. He's hurt, but he was headed towards an All-Star game, no doubt in my mind. Read about him. And he's hurt, so what does that happen to prices when someone's hurt? They go down. And does that give us a buying opportunity? That's for you guys to decide, right? Could be. So are these guys worth a quick look, even if it's a short-term flip? Will they get a bump? I don't know, but I think they will. I mean, if you're named to an all-star team, what's going to happen? You're all over SportsCenter, right? You're all over the highlights. First-time all-star, Julius Randle, whatever it is. In the short term, that's something that I look at as a price enhancer to maybe get a quick bump. Not telling you guys, I mean, if you go back and look at cards, I do this because I do it all the time. When I look at like a guy like Bam Adebayo, he gets named to the all-star team, and then his card just continues to rise, right? It's indicative of his play. So that's just something that you can look at, but I'm talking short-term flip. I buy a card for, I don't know, whatever it is, Julius Randle, $30, whatever he's gone for, and he hits the All-Star game and he goes to 45 or 60, flip him, done, move on. Whatever. Just some stuff for you guys to think about. Speaking of Christian Wood, see what I did there? Christian Wood exemplifies what I was speaking about earlier. He is why it's important to see the forest for the trees. If you counted on price charts and pop reports to identify Mr. Wood as a buy, you still be looking, because he doesn't exist. He only exists in the physical realm of basketball. Imagine that. I can't go look at a price guide or a pop report and know anything about Christian Wood. Nope, can't do it. And for someone to identify him early on, the person was my son. Christian Wood was a direct result of our brainstorming, our strategies together. He called me. He said, I've been looking at this guy. I've been monitoring him for the last 3 games. I've been reading about him. It sounds crazy, but take a look at Christian Wood. He's balling out, his words. And he's going to blow up once he gets out of Detroit. So do a workup on him. He's asking me if I do a workup on him, let me know what you think, if we should move forward on him, and we'll go from there. I know you guys are thinking, okay, Andy, sure he did. Well, back in July...
I'm curious on your end. You do a lot of research. You do a lot of homework. Who are some players, maybe a player or two that you're currently buying or looking into that maybe might fly under the radar a little bit, and why?
As I said this, and people that know, I told them I'm never going to be that guy that says, go buy this card. But there are certain guys that I do like, and I really like the second tier type rookies. And one of the guys that I think has a chance, and he's kind of, I don't think he's under the radar, but he's not a rookie anymore. I'm going to give you one that you can say, okay, Andy told me if it hits, then okay, I'm going to give him all the credit in the world, right?
It'll be documented here, yeah.
Documented here forever, right? And I actually brought this guy by Jordan, and Jordan's like, no, you're crazy. It's not going to happen. There's a guy that plays for the Detroit Pistons. I'm going to give some hints out there. He plays for the Detroit Pistons. He is a 5-year veteran, undrafted free agent, that his contract year's coming up. He never played more than, 12 or 15 games in a season, but he played 62, I think, last year. His last 3 or 4 games, he was averaging 30-plus points a game. And depending on when this guy goes to the next team, I think he has a shot. Now, his cards are kind of scarce because I've been looking to kind of grab them myself. I'm full transparency. But this guy's name is Christian Wood. Yeah. How many people have heard of Christian Wood?
He's a UNLV kid, I think.
That's right. You got it. UNLV. And Sixer, undrafted from the Sixers, went everywhere. And he finally caught some fire, found a home in Detroit. Now, I don't know if Detroit's going to be able to keep him. I think from looking at it, because I wanted to see, if they don't keep him, where could he end up? Because where this guy ends up could make or break his value as far as. It's funny because my son was a big Pistons fan. He grew up literally at the Palace. His best friend was Joe Dumars' nephew. So they used to hang out at the family room. And, that's something that I said, you're going to remember this, how lucky you were one day. But he said, he goes, Dad, look at Christian Wood. I know you're going to think I'm crazy, but just do an evaluation of what you think about him. And I'm like, he's 24 years old. He's undrafted. He's never played over 20 games. He's averaged 22 points in his last 10 games. He's 7 feet. He's super athletic. What do you think? And I'm looking, and the more I'm looking, I'm like, no, to buy a few cards and just, like you're saying, maybe get them slabbed up and hold them. And you just don't know, because everybody's on the top 10 or top 15 guys. But it's that one guy out there that if you can put your hands on, or you can.
So I want to thank Brett from Stacking Slabs, best podcast out there. He's become a very, very good friend of mine. Brett's terrific. Brett has also memorialized Christian Wood forever. Excuse me, and that was such a fun interview. So look, what I'm saying is, there are other Christian Woods out there. They arise every season, right? Different times, different levels. It's up to you to find them. Do your research. Use everything and anything at your disposal to give you an advantage over other investors. That's right. I want you to be successful over the other guys in this hobby. You could do it. You have the ability to identify players and trends before anyone else. While they're concentrating on a 9% drop in Zion, who gives a rat's ass? You do the work and you find those other guys. And besides that, a 9% drop on Zion now means nothing, because we've already made our money on him. Unless you think he's a long-term hold, then it doesn't matter, because you're not getting rid of him anyway. This is what's going to separate you from the other guys being told what, when, where, why to buy. You're better than that. We're better than that. One more important thing, don't buy Christian Wood. Look at his prices. It's ridiculous. He's $100 plus now for his card. And that's mainly because he doesn't have any cards out there. It's just a Donruss paper rookie card. So take a look. I mean, you can. I'm never going to tell you what or what not to buy. Take a look at them, but I can't recommend. I don't ever recommend anything to you guys, but give you the tools necessary to figure out who to buy. That's all I can do, right? And one more thing before we go. We are approaching, I think we're like 200 and some away from 1,000 subscribers. Crazy, insane. I can't believe it. I have no idea when or if we'll ever get there. But if we do, because I'm not in it for that, if we do, I'm going to give away a Christian Wood card. Because guess what? I was on him in July. I was picking him up when he was $18 to $20. Now I got a bunch in for grading. I got to see what comes back. But when we hit that 1,000, someone out there is going to get a Christian Wood card. Okay? Plus, you guys know I love giving stuff away. And if you haven't, hit me up on Instagram if I said you guys are a winner. 2 guys already claimed their prizes. You guys, don't forget if you see that winner. So that's it for this episode of the Sports Card Investigator. If you like what you saw, hit the subscribe, hit the like. If you didn't like what you saw, hit the like, hit the subscribe. But that's it. Until next time, take care.